My father sat across from me at the mahogany dinner table in our home, the same table where we'd eaten dinner for 32 years, the same table where my mother had celebrated my first promotion, the same table where my brother had announced his engagement to a woman he'd known for 4 months. But this moment was different. "I need to talk to you about something," my father said. His voice was calm, almost too calm. The kind of calm that comes right before someone says something that shatters everything you thought you knew. I looked at him. My mother was sitting next to him, her hands folded in her lap. Neither of them would meet my eyes. "What is it?" I asked. But I already felt it. That sinking feeling in your stomach when you know something terrible is about to happen, but you can't stop it. You can only watch it come toward you like a car you can't get out of the way of. My father took a breath. "Your brother, he needs some financial help." I waited. There was more. There was always more. "His business venture isn't doing well. The investment he made, it's not working out. He's going to lose everything." I still said nothing. I was waiting for them to ask me, waiting for them to say my name, waiting for any acknowledgement that I was sitting right there. "We've decided to give him $250,000, my father continued. "It's going to come from the family emergency fund, the fund that was supposed to be for all three of our children." There it was, all three of our children. There are only two of us, me and my brother. My sister died when she was 7 years old. A car accident. I was 9. My brother was 5. We don't talk about her much anymore. It hurts too much. So the emergency fund had been created in her name. It was supposed to be for any of us if we ever fell on hard times. I had never touched it. Not when I was struggling to start my own business. Not when I got sick and couldn't work for 3 months. Not when my car broke down and I couldn't afford to fix it. I had worked 3 jobs to get through that period. I had sold my furniture. I had eaten ramen for dinner almost every night. But I had never asked my parents for help. My brother, on the other hand, had been given a car when he turned 16, paid for college without question, been given his first apartment as a gift, had money wired to him whenever he asked. And now, after he'd made a bad business decision, they were going to empty the family emergency fund to save him. "Okay," I said. That's all I could manage. Just one word. "Okay." But inside, something was breaking. Something fundamental. Something I had built my entire relationship with my parents on was cracking like old glass. "We knew you'd understand," my mother said, reaching across the table to touch my hand. "You've always been so strong, so independent. You don't need us the way your brother does." That was the moment I made a decision. That was the moment I decided to never let my parents be in a position to help me again. To never need them. To build something so big, so successful, so undeniable that they would have no choice but to see me as more than just the strong one. The one who didn't need anything. The one who was easy to forget because she never asked for anything. I was going to become someone they couldn't ignore. I was going to become a CEO. But I wouldn't tell them. I would do it in silence. I would build my empire quietly, carefully, while they continued to pour their attention and their money into my brother, who would never appreciate it, who would never use it wisely, who would never become the person my parents desperately wanted him to be. And then, when the time was right, they would find out, and it would destroy them. That's where this story really begins. Not with my triumph, but with my pain. Not with my success, but with my determination, born from betrayal. Because here's what I learned. Sometimes the best revenge isn't anger. It's not confrontation. It's not screaming and fighting and demanding they see you. Sometimes the best revenge is simply becoming so successful that they have no choice but to see you. And then, when they finally do, making them understand exactly what they missed, exactly what they threw away, exactly what they chose not to invest in when they had the chance. To understand how I got here, you have to understand where I started. And where I started was in a family that had already been broken by grief. My sister Emma was 7 when she died. I was 9. My brother Marcus was 5. We were driving home from soccer practice on a Tuesday afternoon. The kind of ordinary Tuesday that you don't think twice about until it becomes the day that changes everything. A drunk driver hit us at an intersection. He ran a red light. My mother was driving. She got a broken arm and some bruises. My father was in the passenger seat. He walked away with almost nothing. Physical injuries, anyway. But Marcus and we were in the back seat. Marcus was behind my father. He was in a car seat because he was still small. And Emma was next to me. She was unbuckled because Mom was turning onto our street and she didn't think to fasten her back in. Emma died at the hospital 4 hours later. Marcus didn't have a scratch on him, and I had a broken collarbone and a fractured rib. But the real damage wasn't physical. It was invisible. It was the kind of damage that lives inside a family and reshapes everything. After Emma died, my parents became different people. They became afraid. Terrified, actually. The kind of terrified that makes you hold on too tight to the people you have left. The kind of terrified that makes you afraid to let them take risks, make mistakes, or do anything without you knowing exactly where they are and what they're doing. But the fear didn't apply equally to all of us. Marcus was 5. He was the baby. He was the last of the before, the last reminder of the family we had been when Emma was still alive. My parents looked at Marcus, and I think they saw a second chance. I think they saw their chance to do everything right this time, to protect him, to make sure nothing bad ever happened to him again. I was 9. I was old enough to understand what had happened. I was old enough to remember Emma. I was old enough to carry the weight of that loss in a way that Marcus, with his 5-year-old mind, could not. And maybe I was also a reminder of what they'd failed to do. Because I had been the one who survived in the car with Emma. I had been the one who lived and she had died. Maybe on some level they couldn't look at me without wondering why. Why me and not her? Why did I get to walk away and she didn't? I'll never know. We never talked about it. My family doesn't talk about things like that. So instead, they threw everything they had into protecting Marcus, making sure he never wanted for anything, never suffered, never experienced loss or pain or disappointment. And I was the one who had to be strong. That was my role in the family after Emma died. I was the strong one, the resilient one, the one who didn't cry, the one who didn't need anything, the one who moved forward and didn't look back. By the time I was 12, I had learned to be invisible. I learned to make myself small, to not ask for things, to not complain, to solve my own problems, to take care of myself in ways that a 12-year-old shouldn't have to. Because every time I needed something, I could see the exhaustion in my mother's eyes. I could see the way my father's shoulders would tense. They already had enough to deal with. They already had enough pain. I wasn't going to add to it, so I didn't. Instead, I became someone who didn't need anything, someone who didn't ask for anything, someone who could be forgotten about because she wasn't causing any problems. This worked fine for a while. When I was in high school, I got good grades. I didn't ask for money or new clothes or anything special. I worked part-time jobs to pay for things I wanted. I was a model daughter. Easy, undemanding, no trouble at all. Meanwhile, Marcus was a different story. Marcus was the golden child, and unlike most golden children, he actually knew it. He was charming. He was good-looking. He was talented at sports, and he knew that our parents would do literally anything for him. When he wanted to play travel soccer, they paid for it. When he wanted expensive cleats, they bought them. When he wanted a car for his 16th birthday, they didn't just buy him a car. They bought him a nice car, a Honda Civic, brand new, in the color he wanted. I got my driver's license at 16 too. I took the bus to school and used my paychecks from my part-time job to buy a used Toyota Corolla that was 12 years old. It ran, it got me where I needed to go, and I was grateful for it. But I remember the day Marcus got his car. I remember standing in the driveway and watching my parents' faces as he drove it. The pride in their eyes, the joy, the sense of accomplishment, like they had done something wonderful. I remember my mother taking a picture of him sitting in the driver's seat, one hand on the steering wheel, smiling that easy smile of his. And I remember thinking, they love him so much more than they love me. It wasn't a dramatic realization. It wasn't like a lightning bolt moment. It was just quiet. A quiet acceptance of something I'd already known for a long time. But that was okay. That was fine. I didn't need their love the way he did. I was strong. I was independent. I would be fine on my own. That became my story. That became the narrative I told myself. That became the thing I held on to when it hurt too much to think about anything else. I would be fine. More than fine. I would be better than fine. I would build something so incredible that they would finally see me. And that's when I decided it. Sophomore year of high school, sitting in the bleachers of Marcus's soccer game while my parents cheered louder than anyone else in the stands. That was when I decided, I'm going to become a CEO. I didn't know what company I would run. I didn't have a business idea. I didn't even fully understand what a CEO did. But I knew that was the one thing that would make them proud. That was the one thing that would prove I was worth seeing. A CEO, someone powerful, someone successful, someone impossible to ignore. And I was going to do it without any help. I was going to do it in complete silence. I was going to build it all on my own, so that when they finally found out, they would understand exactly what they had missed by not believing in me. That was my dream. That was my revenge. That was the thing that got me through the painful parts that came next. I got into a good university, a really good university, full scholarship. I worked hard in high school, got excellent grades, and I got in. I remember my parents' reaction when I told them. My father said, "That's great." My mother said, "We're very proud of you." But there was something in their voices that wasn't quite the same as when Marcus got his car. It was pride, yes, but it was a different kind of pride. The kind of pride you have when someone does what they were supposed to do, when someone meets your expectations, not the kind of pride you have when someone exceeds them, when someone does something that takes your breath away. But Marcus, by the time I got my acceptance letter, had already decided not to go to college. He had decided to take a year off and figure out what he really wanted to do with his life. My parents were supportive of that too. They gave him money for a trip to Europe. They told him to take his time. They said it was important to take care of yourself and figure out your path. No pressure, no demands, just love and support and money. I went to college with a full scholarship and a job at the campus bookstore. I worked 20 hours a week. I went to classes, I studied, I made good grades, and at night I did something else. I started teaching myself about business. It started as just curiosity. I was fascinated by how companies worked, by how people built things from nothing. So I read books, I took online courses, I listened to podcasts about entrepreneurship. I read about successful CEOs and how they got started. And the more I read, the more I realized something important. Most successful people didn't start because they were born into success. They didn't have advantages. They had something else. They had hunger. They had the desperation that comes from knowing that nobody was going to help them, that they had to build something themselves or they were going to fail. And they had time. They had the willingness to work 70-hour weeks when everyone else was sleeping, to sacrifice things that other people took for granted, to be so focused on their goal that everything else became secondary. I had that. I had so much of that. By my sophomore year, I had an idea. It started small. Almost ridiculous, actually. I noticed that a lot of students on campus were struggling with time management. They had classes and jobs and studying and trying to have social lives, and it was all too much. And I noticed that there were a lot of apps that claimed to help with productivity, but they were all confusing. They were all designed by people who didn't understand what actual students needed. So I started building something different. I taught myself to code. I know that sounds dramatic, but I'm serious. I went to the library and I checked out books on programming. I watched YouTube videos at 2 in the morning after I'd finished my shift at the bookstore. I took online classes through Coursera and MIT OpenCourseWare. And over the course of my sophomore and junior year, I built an app. It was called StudyFlow. StudyFlow was simple. It looked at your schedule. It looked at your classes. It looked at your assignments. And it created a realistic study plan for you that actually accounted for the fact that you also needed to sleep and eat and have some kind of social interaction. It was nothing fancy. The design was basic. The functionality was limited compared to what I wanted it to be. But it worked. And more importantly, it solved a real problem. I launched it on a Friday morning. I didn't tell anyone at my university except my roommate. I just put it out there on the App Store and waited. The first week, I got 37 downloads. I was so excited I couldn't sleep. By the end of the month, I had 2,000 downloads. By the end of the semester, I had 15,000. The reviews were good. Students were using it. They were telling their friends about it. They were leaving comments saying things like, "This changed my life," and finally something that makes sense, and why isn't this taught in school? And I was making money. Not a lot of money at first, but something. Maybe $300 a month in the beginning, then $500, then $1,000. I was making $1,000 a month from an app I had built in my spare time while working 20 hours a week and going to school full-time. I should have told my parents. I know that now. I should have shared this moment with them. I should have let them be proud of me. But I didn't. Because somewhere deep inside, I was afraid they would want me to stop. That they would think it was risky. That they would want me to focus on school and not waste time on something that might fail. That they would compare it to something Marcus was doing and find my app lacking. So I didn't tell them. Instead, I kept building. During my junior year, I started making improvements to StudyFlow. I added features. I improved the design. I made partnerships with universities to integrate the app into their student portals. By my senior year, I had over 300,000 active users. I was making $30,000 a month. $30,000 a month. And I was doing it completely alone. I hadn't taken any investment. I hadn't hired anyone. It was just me, building something in the hours between my job and my classes. I graduated with a degree in computer science and honors in my field. My parents came to my graduation. They took pictures. They told me they were proud. They gave me a gift, a nice watch. My brother, who still hadn't figured out what he wanted to do, got a check for $5,000 from our parents as a graduation gift for finishing his first year of community college. But I didn't say anything. I just smiled and thanked them for the watch and went back to my dorm and worked on my app. By the time I was 22 years old, I was running a company that was making $500,000 a year. By the time I was 25, it was making $3 million a year, and my parents still had no idea. The moment everything came to a head happened during a family dinner. It was my parents' 30th wedding anniversary. They had decided to have a small dinner at their house with just the three of us. My parents, Marcus, and me. By this point, I was 28 years old. StudyFlow had grown exponentially. We'd expanded to international markets. We had 50 employees. We were valued at over $100 million. I was running the company as CEO, and I was making more money than I had ever dreamed of. But nobody in my family knew any of this. My parents still thought I worked at a tech company in some kind of normal job. I had never directly lied to them, but I had been very careful about what I told them. I would say things like, "Work is going well, and we're growing, and I'm happy with what I'm doing." All technically true. All very carefully crafted to not reveal the full extent of what I was building. Marcus, in the meantime, was still figuring out his life. At 26, he had tried several different jobs, started 2 different businesses that had failed, and was currently in the process of trying to open a gym with money our parents had given him. He was charming and good-looking and generally unsuccessful, and our parents loved him as much as ever. We were all sitting in the dining room of my parents' house, the same house where I had eaten dinner every night as a child, the same dining room where Emma had sat at the table before she was gone. My mother had made her famous lasagna. We were eating, and my father raised his glass for a toast. To 30 years, he said. To the people we love and the family we've built. To the people who support us and believe in us. He looked at Marcus as he said that last part. I want to tell you all something important, my father continued. Marcus has come to me with a business idea. It's a fitness center, but not just any fitness center. It's going to specialize in rehabilitation therapy for people with chronic pain. It's a unique idea, and I believe in it. I knew all of this already. Marcus had mentioned it to me a few weeks earlier. So, my father said, your mother and I have decided to invest in Marcus's business. We're giving him $500,000 to get started. $500,000. I set down my fork. I didn't do it dramatically. I just set it down. But I could feel the weight of the moment. That's wonderful, I said. My voice was steady. I'm sure Marcus will do great things with that. Marcus smiled that easy smile of his. Thanks, sis, he said. I'm really excited about this. I think it's going to be big. I nodded and took a sip of water. My mother was beaming. She looked at my father and then at Marcus, like they had just told her she'd won the lottery. Like this was the greatest news anyone had ever received. We believe in you, son, my father said to Marcus. We always have, and we always will. Whatever you do, we're behind you. And that was when something inside me snapped. Not in an angry way, in a quiet way. In the way that a door closes and you realize that it's not going to open again. I smiled through the rest of dinner. I congratulated Marcus. I helped my mother clear the plates. I made normal conversation. I was the strong one, the one who didn't cause problems, the one who made everything easy. But inside, something fundamental had shifted. That night, after I left my parents' house, I sat in my car for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there and thought about everything. $500,000. That was the amount my parents had decided to give my brother to help him start a business that would probably fail. The same brother who had failed at every business he'd ever tried. The same brother who had never worked hard for anything in his life because everything had always been handed to him. And they hadn't once asked me what I was doing. They hadn't once offered to help me. They hadn't once shown interest in my career or my life or my goals. Because I was the strong one. Because I didn't need help. Because it was easy to forget about the person who never asked for anything. I thought about all the times I had needed help. All the times I had struggled. All the times I had stayed up at night trying to figure out how to solve problems. All the times I had been terrified that everything would fall apart. And I had done it alone. Without asking. Without complaining. Without expecting anything. And this was my reward. To be taken for granted. To be invisible. To be the one who didn't matter enough to invest in. That was when I made a decision. It wasn't a decision made in anger. It was a decision made in clarity. I was going to let my brother fail. And when he failed, I was going to be there to see it. And my parents were going to realize, finally, that they had made a mistake. That they had chosen wrong. That they had invested their time and their money and their love into the wrong child. And it was going to hurt them the way they had hurt me. But here's the thing about revenge. It doesn't bring relief. It doesn't bring closure. It just brings more pain. I didn't know that yet, though. I was too angry to know that yet. So instead of going home to my apartment, I drove to my office. And I started working. The next 2 years were intense. After that dinner, something shifted inside me. It was like the last part of my conscience that had been trying to keep peace with my family was gone. It was like I was finally able to focus 100% on what I was building, without any distraction or doubt or lingering hope that my family might come around. I had been successful before, but now I was driven in a way that I had never been before. Study flow was already doing well, but I started pushing harder. I had been content to let the app grow organically, to add features slowly, to keep the company small and manageable. But now I changed that strategy. I started hiring. I brought in a VP of product. I brought in a VP of marketing. I brought in a CFO who actually knew how to raise money. And I decided to raise our first round of institutional investment. I should clarify, I had been turning down investment offers for years, because taking investment meant giving up control, and I needed control. I needed to build this the way I wanted to build it, without anyone else's input or interference. But I was also limited by my own time and energy, and I was starting to realize that if I wanted to build something truly big, something that would be undeniable, I was going to need help. So I raised $20 million in Series A funding. Just like that. $20 million. The lead investor was one of the biggest venture capital firms in the world. Their partner, a woman named Victoria, believed in my vision so completely that she didn't even hesitate. She just said yes. With that $20 million, I was able to build the company I had been dreaming of building. I hired the best people I could find. I expanded internationally. I added new features that users had been asking for years. I built tools for teachers and parents and academic advisors. I turned StudyFlow from an app into a whole ecosystem. And I didn't tell my parents any of it. That was the strange part. Throughout all of this growth, throughout all of this success, I was living a double life. At work, I was the CEO of a rapidly growing tech company. I was in board meetings with some of the smartest people in the world. I was making decisions that affected hundreds of thousands of lives. I was building something that was changing education. But when I saw my parents, I was still the invisible daughter, the one who was doing fine on her own, the one who didn't need anything, the one who could be taken for granted. My mother would ask me about work, and I would say something vague like, "It's going well, we're growing." I would show her pictures of my new apartment, a beautiful place in the city that I had bought with money I'd made, and she would say it was nice, but I could tell she didn't really understand how I had afforded it on what she imagined my salary to be. My father would ask me about my dating life and whether I'd found anyone yet, because at 30 years old, that was apparently more important than asking about my career. And Marcus? Marcus was failing, exactly as I had predicted he would. The gym he started with the $500,000 that my parents gave him was a disaster. He didn't know how to manage the business. He didn't know how to manage people. He didn't know how to market himself or keep costs down or do any of the 1,000 things that are required to run a successful business. Within 18 months, the gym was bankrupt. My parents gave him another $100,000 to help him get back on his feet. By this point, StudyFlow was valued at $300 million. We were preparing for our Series B funding round. We were being written about in major tech publications. I had been featured in Forbes and Fast Company. I had been named one of the most promising young entrepreneurs in the world. And my parents still had no idea. I watched my father talk about Marcus with such pride, even as Marcus's life was falling apart. Even as Marcus kept making the same mistakes over and over again. Even as my brother continued to fail at everything he touched. And I realized something. They didn't believe in Marcus because he had done anything to earn that belief. They believed in him because he was the golden child. Because he was their investment. Because they had decided long ago that he was worth saving, and they weren't going to change that belief no matter what happened. It was about them, not about him. It was about their pride in their choice, not about Marcus's actual abilities or accomplishments. And that's when I decided that it wasn't enough to just be successful. It wasn't enough to just build something big. I needed them to see the contrast. I needed them to understand, viscerally and completely, what they had missed. I needed to force them to see. So I started planning. I was going to have a family dinner. But this time, I was going to tell them the truth. I was going to lay out exactly what I had built, exactly how successful I was, exactly how wrong they had been about me, and how wrong they had been about Marcus. And I was going to do it in a way that they could never take back, in a way that would change everything. But I was going to do it strategically. I was going to time it perfectly, because I wanted maximum impact. I wanted them to understand, in that moment, that they had made a catastrophic mistake. They had invested everything in the wrong child, and it was too late to fix that now. The moment came about 2 months later. It came in the form of an invitation to a major tech conference, one of the biggest in the world, a conference where the leading technology companies gave keynote speeches and announced new products and celebrated innovation. I had been invited to be a keynote speaker. Me, the invisible daughter, the one nobody had believed in, the one who had built everything alone while her family ignored her. I was going to give a keynote speech at one of the biggest tech conferences in the world, and I had a choice to make. I could give the speech without telling my family. I could let them find out afterward, by reading about it online or hearing about it from someone else. Or I could invite them to attend. I could make them watch as I walked on that stage and gave a speech in front of thousands of people. I could make them see, in that moment, exactly what they had missed. I chose the second option. I called my mother and told her I had something special to show her. I told her that my whole family should attend. I said I was giving a keynote speech at a major tech conference and I wanted them to be there. My mother was excited. She said she'd never been to a tech conference before. She asked if it would be interesting. I told her yes, it would be very interesting. I didn't tell her why. I bought them premium seats, front row, center, perfect view of the stage. My parents, my brother, they all came. The conference was being held at a massive venue in San Francisco. The keynote stage was enormous. There were thousands of people in the audience. The energy was electric. I was backstage, waiting to go on. I was nervous, not because of the crowd, not because of the magnitude of the moment, but because I knew what was about to happen. I knew that in the next hour, everything was going to change. The moderator came on stage and introduced the keynote speaker. She talked about me, about study flow, about the impact I'd had on education, about how my app was being used by over 50 million students around the world, about how I'd been named one of the most innovative entrepreneurs of my generation. And she said my name. I walked onto that stage, and from the front row, I could see my mother's jaw drop. I could see the exact moment when she realized who the keynote speaker was. I could see my father's confusion turn into recognition. I could see Marcus's face go pale as he understood, finally, what had been happening all this time. I didn't acknowledge them. I didn't even look at them directly. I just took my place at the podium and looked out at the thousands of people who had come to listen to what I had to say. And I started to talk. Most of you don't know this about me, I began, but I'm standing on this stage today because of something that happened to me when I was 28 years old. I was at a family dinner, and my parents told my brother that they believed in him, that they would always be behind him, that they would always support him, no matter what. I paused. And my parents didn't say any of that to me. Not that day. Not ever. I could feel the shift in the audience. They were leaning forward. They wanted to know where this was going. See, I continued. I had been running a successful company for 4 years at that point. I had 50 employees. We were generating $3 million in annual revenue. I had created something that was helping millions of people around the world. But my parents didn't know any of that, because I had never told them. Because I had learned a long time ago that I wasn't the child they believed in. I wasn't the child they invested in. I was the strong one, the independent one, the one who didn't need anything. My voice was steady, but I could feel the emotion building behind it. And I realized something that night. I realized that we tell ourselves stories about who we are, and often those stories are written by other people, our parents, our teachers, our peers, and sometimes those stories are wrong. Sometimes the people who are supposed to believe in you don't, and sometimes you have to believe in yourself so completely that it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. I looked directly at my family for the first time. My mother looked like she was going to cry. My father looked devastated. Marcus just looked confused, like he didn't understand what any of this had to do with him. Today, I said, StudyFlow has 50 million active users in 137 countries. We've raised $200 million in funding. We're valued at over $2 billion, and we've helped millions of students get better grades, get into better schools, and improve their lives. I let that sink in. And I want to be very clear, I said. I did this alone. I did this without any help. I did this without the belief of the people who were supposed to believe in me. I did this because I had to. Because I had no other choice. My father's face had gone completely white. But here's what I learned, I continued, my voice growing stronger. I learned that you don't need other people's belief to be successful. You don't need their approval. You don't need their investment. What you need is your own vision, your own determination, your own refusal to be invisible. I smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. So this keynote speech isn't really about how to build a successful tech company. It's about this. Don't let other people write your story. Don't let other people decide who you are. And don't let the people who don't believe in you define your worth. Because you are worth more than the belief of the people who have chosen to ignore you. The audience erupted in applause. And as I looked down at my family, I saw something shift. I saw the moment when they finally understood. The moment when they realized what I had done, what I had built, what I had accomplished without them. And I saw the moment when they understood what it meant, that I had done it all without them. My mother had her hand over her mouth. There were tears streaming down her face. My father just sat there completely still, like his entire world had just been rearranged. And Marcus looked like he was going to be sick. I finished my speech. The audience gave me a standing ovation. I went backstage and I cried. Not tears of triumph, tears of something much more complicated, tears of release, tears of pain, tears of the understanding that my revenge, now that I finally had it, wasn't as sweet as I had thought it would be. Because the truth was, I didn't feel better. I just felt sad. After the speech, my family found me backstage. My mother came first. She hugged me and I let her, but my arms didn't come up to hug her back. She felt that. I think she understood in that moment that something had broken between us, and it might not be repairable. "I'm so proud of you," she said. "I'm so, so proud of you." I wanted to tell her that I didn't care about her pride anymore, that it was too late, that I had spent years building something incredible without it, and I didn't need it now. But I didn't say any of that. I just said, "Thank you." My father came next. He looked like he had aged 10 years since the beginning of the speech. His face was gray, his eyes were red. "I didn't know," he said. "I didn't know any of this." "I know," I said. "That was the point." "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm so sorry. I should have believed in you." And I realized something in that moment. He meant it. He was genuinely sorry. He had genuinely made a mistake. He had genuinely chosen wrong. But his being sorry didn't change anything. His being sorry didn't give me back the years I had spent feeling invisible. His being sorry didn't pay me back for all the times I had struggled alone while he gave money to Marcus. "It's okay," I said, because I didn't know what else to say. But it wasn't okay, and we both knew it. Marcus didn't say anything. He just looked at me with this expression of hurt and betrayal on his face, like I had done something cruel to him, and I realized that he didn't understand. He didn't understand that this wasn't about hurting him. This was about finally making my parents see what they had failed to see. He left without talking to me. I didn't see him again for 3 months. In the weeks after the keynote speech, my parents called me constantly. They wanted to have dinner. They wanted to talk. They wanted to understand how I had built such a successful company without telling them. I went to dinner with them once. We sat in the same dining room where I had learned years ago that my brother's failed business was worth $500,000 of their money. And my mother told me that she had been reading about StudyFlow, that she and my father had downloaded the app, that they were proud of me. And I felt nothing. I felt completely numb. I realized that this was the thing about revenge that nobody tells you. When you finally get it, when you finally prove the people wrong who didn't believe in you, it doesn't make you feel better. It doesn't heal the wound. It just makes you realize that the wound was never going to be healed by their approval. That the thing I had been seeking all along was never going to be enough. Because the problem wasn't that my parents didn't believe in me. The problem was that I didn't believe in myself until I had something to prove to them. And that was a much harder problem to solve. 2 months after the speech, my brother called me. He asked if we could meet for coffee. I was reluctant, but I agreed. Marcus looked terrible. He looked like he hadn't been sleeping. He looked like the weight of the last few months had crushed something inside of him. "I want to say something," he said, "and I want you to listen without interrupting." I nodded. "I know that I was the golden child," he said. "I know that Mom and Dad believed in me and gave me things and invested in me. And I know that you weren't, that you were left out. And I'm sorry for that. I'm so sorry." He was crying. My brother, who had always seemed so invincible, was sitting across from me in a coffee shop and crying. "But the thing is," he continued, "I didn't ask for that. I didn't ask them to choose me over you. I didn't ask for the money or the praise or the attention. And I've spent the last few months understanding that all of it was a lie. Because they didn't love me. They loved the idea of me. They loved the idea of saving me. And when I stopped being savable, when I turned into something complicated and flawed and human, they didn't know what to do with me." He was right. I understood that now too. "And the thing that you did," Marcus continued, "the thing that you did by building all of this alone, by becoming successful without them, I think you understood something that I'm only just now figuring out. You understood that you had to do it for yourself, not for them, for yourself." I hadn't thought about it that way, but he was right. "I'm sorry," Marcus said again. "I'm sorry for being the golden child. I'm sorry for not seeing what was happening to you. I'm sorry for being a terrible brother." "You weren't a terrible brother," I said. You were just 9 years old when Emma died, and you didn't understand. And then they made you into something that wasn't your fault." Marcus looked at me, and for the first time in our lives, I felt like I could see him. Not as the golden child, not as my rival, but as a person who had also been hurt by the same family dynamics that had hurt me, just in a different way. "I'm going to start over," Marcus said. "I'm not going to take any more money from Mom and Dad. I'm going to figure out what I actually want to do with my life. Not what they want, not what I think they want, but what I actually want." "That's good," I said. And I meant it. We didn't become close overnight. We didn't suddenly become the siblings who had supported each other through everything. But something shifted in our relationship. Something moved from competition to something that might someday become understanding. As for my parents, we've had to renegotiate the entire relationship. They want to be proud of me. They want to celebrate my success. But it comes with this undercurrent of guilt and regret that makes everything feel a little bit painful. My mother started following me on social media. She brags about me to her friends. She tells people that her daughter is a CEO of a billion-dollar company. And every time I hear her say that, I feel something. I don't know if it's what I thought revenge would feel like, but it's something. It's been 5 years since that keynote speech. A lot has changed. StudyFlow is now valued at $4 billion. We have 200 million active users. We operate in 185 countries. We've raised over $500 million in funding. We've won numerous awards. I've been on the cover of multiple magazines. By every external measure, I'm a massive success. And I'm here to tell you that success built on the foundation of proving other people wrong is a hollow thing. I say that not to diminish what I've accomplished. I accomplished something real. I built something that helps millions of people. I changed the landscape of education technology. I created jobs for thousands of people. I made a genuine impact in the world. But the fuel that kept me going for those years, the anger, the desire for revenge, the need to prove my parents wrong, that wasn't a healthy fuel. And once the goal had been achieved, once I had proven them wrong, I was left with this empty feeling that no amount of success could fill. I spent 6 months in therapy trying to figure out why being right wasn't enough, why proving them wrong didn't feel like I thought it would, why I didn't feel triumphant and vindicated, but instead felt sad and angry and empty. And my therapist asked me something that changed everything. She asked, "What would you have built if nobody had ever hurt you? What would you have created if you didn't have anything to prove?" And I didn't have an answer, because I had been building in reaction to my family's neglect for so long that I didn't know how to build for any other reason. So I took some time away from the company. I stepped back from my CEO role and let my VP of product take over for a few months. And I spent that time asking myself what I actually wanted. Not what would impress my parents, not what would prove them wrong, not what would make them finally see me. What did I actually want? And the answer surprised me. I wanted to teach. I wanted to mentor young entrepreneurs, especially young women who had been overlooked or underestimated. I wanted to take everything I had learned, all the painful lessons, all the things I had figured out alone, and I wanted to pass that knowledge on to other people. I wanted my success to mean something bigger than just my own vindication. So that's what I started doing. I created a scholarship fund for young women entrepreneurs. I started mentoring companies. I became an investor in other startups, particularly ones founded by women and people from underrepresented groups. I started speaking at universities about the importance of building something for yourself, not for other people's approval. And something interesting happened. As I started building for a reason other than revenge, the building became joyful again. It became something that I did because I loved it, not because I had something to prove. And that changed everything. Now, when my mother tells people that her daughter is a CEO, I don't feel that complicated mixture of vindication and sadness. I feel, I don't know. It's not quite love. We've done some healing, but we've also created a new distance. She can be proud of me, but she can't take credit for me. She can celebrate my success, but she has to live with the knowledge that she wasn't part of my journey. That's her consequence. That's her loss. And I've had to make peace with the fact that she's going to have to live with that. That I can't change her regret. I can't undo the past. The only thing I can do is move forward and make sure that I'm building something that matters to me now, not something that mattered to my anger 5 years ago. As for Marcus, we're actually close now. He started a nonprofit focused on helping people with mental health issues. He's not a businessman, and he's finally okay with that. He's doing something meaningful with his life, something that he chose, and he's really good at it. My parents love what he's doing now too, but this time he's not doing it for them. He's doing it for himself. And I think that's the real lesson here. That's the thing that I wish I had understood earlier. You can't build something real on a foundation of anger and resentment. It will work for a while. It will keep you motivated. It will help you push through the difficult moments. But eventually you're going to reach the goal. And when you do, you're going to realize that the goal was never the thing. The thing you were actually seeking was peace. And proving other people wrong never brings peace. Peace comes from something else. It comes from knowing that you did something that mattered. It comes from creating something that helps people. It comes from moving past the need for other people's approval and building something because it's meaningful to you. I spent my 20s and early 30s proving my parents wrong. I spent those years being invisible, being overlooked, being underestimated, and using that pain as fuel. And I would do it all differently if I could. Not because it didn't work. It worked incredibly well. But because the victory was hollow. Because when I finally won, there was nobody to celebrate with. Because I had been so focused on proving them wrong that I had lost the ability to just enjoy what I was building. So here's what I want to say to anyone who's listening to this and thinking, yes, I'm going to build something incredible just to show the people who didn't believe in me. Do it. Build something incredible. Prove them wrong. Achieve your goals. But do it knowing that the sweet part of success isn't the moment when they finally see you. The sweet part is everything you build after that moment. The sweet part is when you realize that you don't need their approval anymore, that you never did. The sweet part is when you finally stop building to prove something to other people, and you start building because you're building something you love. That's when the real success begins. My name is Sarah. I'm 33 years old. I'm the CEO of a $4 billion company that started as a simple app I built in my dorm room. I've built something that matters. I've changed the lives of millions of people. I've proven my family wrong about me in every possible way. And the truth is, I don't think about that anymore. I think about the app. I think about my team. I think about how we can make education better. I think about the young entrepreneurs that I'm mentoring. I think about the future. I don't think about proving anything to anyone. And that's how I know I've truly succeeded. Not because they finally see me, but because I finally stopped needing them to.